woman came out of a meeting and feverishly tried to find the keys of her car. She looked into her handbag, the pockets of her coat, went back to the room but couldn't find them. Then she remembered that she had left them in the ignition of her car. That was her policy to do that because she knew that if ever she forgot them, that she could find them there. Her husband used to scold her about that, saying that one day someone will steal your car. However, she ignored him. Down she goes to the car lot, and to her absolute consternation, the car's gone. So she rings the police and says, "Look, I'm so-and-so, I'm in this place. I've left the keys of my car in the ignition and now the car's been stolen." And then, with a lot of trepidation and fear, but she always used the word love when she was in trouble with her husband, and she rang him up and said, "Love, my car has been stolen." There was a long silence and she thought the phone had been disconnected. And finally he barked and said, "I dropped you off." And she was very chagrined, of course, and said, "Well, look, darling," she said, "would you be good enough to come and pick me up?" And he said, "Yes, I will, as soon as I convince this policeman that I'm not driving a stolen car." Well, that's what they call the golden years, the years of latter marriage, where everything runs smoothly, but not in that case. Today, it's dealing with the book of Genesis. I remember hearing about this group of scientists who decided that humankind had made such great progress that they didn't need to believe in God anymore. So they contacted God and said, "Look, we can do all things now. We can clone human beings. We can do all types of miraculous things. So God, you can get lost." God listened patiently. Then he said, "Well, look, let's have a competition, a man and woman making competition, and let's do it in the way that we heard about in the old days." So they agreed to that. They bent down and started scrubbing up some dust. And God said, "Hey, steady," he said, "get your own dust." So the point at issue is that this story that you've heard of from the book of Genesis is the effort of the sacred writer to explain the situation of humanity. But the point at issue is, we live in a scientific age, and there's no clash between religion and science, and the theory and science of evolution is very valid and strong. And so the writer is trying to explain that at one stage in our evolution, we've had the Neanderthal man, we've had the Procragnon man, we've had Homo erectus, and now we've got what the paleontologists call, and of who, your Homo sapiens. And in the evolutionary progress there came a moment when humanity developed a self-awareness consciousness, and they developed some knowledge of right and wrong. They began to think and plan. And that's what the writer is trying to say in his poetic way, that scientifically that's what's happened. And when it says that we are to labour on the earth and to eat by its fruits, its beings, it wasn't a punishment, it was we're to be co-creators. And the thing is that we used to talk about the fall of humanity from God's favour. We used to talk about our children having original sin, which had to be wiped away by the waters of baptism. Well, that just doesn't hold true. What we're talking about, God who loved us, and the Holy Father is telling us all the time He's a God of compassion, would never let us be away from Him. There's no such thing as the fall. It's really an emergence to a new life that you're enjoying here today in this church. The coming of Christ, who came to give you that new life, the life of the Spirit, who came to give you the great gifts of understanding and help one another and living in community, who came to look after the sick, and the lost and the broken-hearted. That was the perfection, as it were, of the evolutionary process. Christ was the apogee. And it's you and I are living that life now. Not because we're strong, but because we're weak. And because we're fortified by the Spirit of Christ that's with us. So at this moment we've got away from a busy life and we're just focused on the point that God is part of our lives. And we've come here to acknowledge Him, and we've come here to thank Him, and we've come here to be filled with that Spirit that helps us in our weaknesses, in our tribulations. And that's what life's about. It's not sort of some imaginative from what Genesis says. It's doing the hard yards now. And turning to the gospel, you've got Jesus particularly doing that. He's out in the desert. He hasn't had anything to eat. He's famished. And all the time, the devil, that force of evil, is tormenting him, saying, give up, go and eat something. He said, worship me. He's saying, you can have everything in the world can offer you. You can have $1 million, you can have everything. All the time, Jesus has been tested, but he never departs from his focus on God. And you and I are tested in our own way. Sickness has come, relationships fail, the children don't do what we'd like, the things, our hopes are dashed, old age creeps upon us, we get sick suddenly, and all these things that are part of life, that self-awareness, consciousness brought us up into the vagaries of life with its joys and sorrows, and that's we're part of it now. But we are blessed because we have Christ with us. We have His grace upon us. We have the guidance of His church. We've got above all His coming to us in the Eucharist as He does this morning. So that's the truth of it. And it doesn't mean that what I've said is not true scientifically or any other way. Religiously it is. But you can look at it at different angles. If people want to think of Adam and Eve and the eating the apple and the serpent hissing around, all right. But that's not the fact. The reality is that we are evolving people, and people will tell you today that the consciousness of mankind is changing with the tremendous interconnections we have with modern technology, with the whole value systems being shifted. But that's where we are. But all the time we keep our focus on the presence of God, the loving God who lives within us, who never forsakes us. There's no such thing as a fall. He always loved you and always will. So we do the best we can to fulfill that call, to do what we can to live in peace with each other, to discharge our responsibilities, to be patient in our afflictions, and always moving forward every day in transition till we come to meet Him face to face. In the meantime, we're here this morning, and He comes to us very subtly and quietly, not with a booming voice, but just through the host, through the words of the Mass, and your presence here.